The talk of the travel space currently is Pattaya, Thailand, Cartagena, Colombia, Medellín, Colombia, and Sosua, Dominican Republic, and last but of course not least, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I think in 2026, if you're sleeping on this location, Lima, Peru, then you might already be too late. I went to Lima, Peru last year for a month, expecting mid, but actually left surprised. So in this video, I want to talk about why Lima, Peru should be a destination for you in 2026 or in 2027. What's up guys, welcome back to today's video. So today I want to vouch for Lima, Peru. A lot of you may not have been subscribed when I made that video. So for a lot of the newcomers, I wanted to do sort of a recap or kind of go over my month-long experience in Lima, Peru. As I said, I went there expecting mid, but actually left surprised. Now, the first thing about Lima, Peru, Lima does not have that flashy wow factor that you're going to get from Rio de Janeiro or maybe Pattaya, Thailand, or even here in Medellín or Cartagena. But it is something that grows on you. I want to say as well that it is very much so, depending if you go in the winter, which I did, it is cold and it is a lot of gray skies. It's not tropical. You're not going to hear a lot of reggaeton blasting everywhere, maybe like you will here in Medellín, Colombia, or Cartagena, Colombia. But after a few days, as I said, it does grow on you. Now, I'm not a cold weather person. I actually hate the cold, but I do plan to go back in their summer months when it is hotter, clear, and you do have more better weather. But besides the weather, I definitely did enjoy Lima, Peru. Now, I want to say this, that it is more suitable, more livable, and less chaotic. It is something like if you want to live like a very chill life, you're not looking for a lot of partying, which they do offer partying, but it's just not going to be in your face like it is in some countries, or it's not what the country is known for. Now, first thing I want to talk about is dating and the women. The women are definitely more reserved in Lima, Peru. They do dress up a lot nicer, I will say more classier than the women here if I'm comparing it to here in Medellín. I saw a lot more classy outfits, you know, more heels, more boots. Versus here in Medellín, you tend to get a lot more lingerie tops and jeans and tennis shoes, or a corset, you know, some type of jeans and tennis shoes, something along the lines of that. You definitely have women that dress more classier in Lima, Peru than you do here in Medellín. I'm going to say the women are definitely very feminine, softer personalities overall, in my opinion. And it takes a bit more effort to actually get to know these women versus, you know, maybe in some places things happen a lot more quicker. In my experience, a lot of the dates I went on, a lot of the women were perfectly fine with getting their own Uber to and from wherever it is I might be. And in some cases, that Uber may have been $15 each way. Versus here in Colombia, pretty much most women are going to ask or expect you to send them an Uber. You definitely do have a lot more women that are independent there. It may be because the economy is, I would say, more stable. Also, they've had more tourists there longer due to their, you know, popularity in the restaurant and food space. And then as well, they have Machu Picchu, and a lot of people tend to go into Lima first before going down to Cusco to go to Machu Picchu. With Colombia, it can be fast, chaotic, and exciting, versus with Lima, Peru, it's going to be a lot slower, more intentional. So with that being said, I think the next thing is just the dating culture differences or dating culture. In Lima, Peru, you're going to get a lot less transactional. Now, don't get me wrong, women are expecting you to provide or do something for them wherever you go. You have to provide some type of value, so there's no difference there. But it isn't so much more based on just what do you have or what can you do for me, or based on what you do for a living or something like that, like it is here, or maybe in some places like Thailand or here in Medellín. It is definitely going to be a lot less transactional. I would say the women are more relationship minded compared to here. My experience here in Medellín, a lot of girls are very transactional or is very short term, which is why, if you come to Medellín or if you've spent any time dating here, you can find a lot of beautiful women here that are just single, and I've always said, if these women are so great, then, why are there so many single and unmarried women here? It poses that question. But yes, the women in Lima, Peru are definitely very much more long-term minded, or, thinking long-term, not so much short-term. I would say also too, there is less expectation of instant attention or validation, complete opposite of what you get here. Now, also too, the big thing is for a lot of guys, or I would say kind of the stigma about Lima, Peru, is that there isn't any beautiful women there. And I actually will say, pose the differ is there's actually a good amount of beautiful women there. It just takes time. You have to look for them. They're just not as common as they are here in Medellín. But you get a flip side of that coin where, you're going to get more realistic women versus here in Medellín. If I'm comparing the two, it's a lot of just, everything is revolved around their vanity, and that's it. It starts and ends with their vanity. In Lima, you don't have that. So it is one huge plus. And then also for me, when I went there, it was actually something very refreshing. Now, do you have to deal with a lot of the same BS that you deal with women in general, whether you're in the United States, Canada, here in Medellín, Colombia, or anywhere else? Of course, it's women you're dealing with, and you're going to have some of those same, it's woman's nature type things. But overall, I feel there's a lot more pros to dating in Lima, Peru, and you're more likely to find a wife if that's what you are looking for, not sex tourism. If you're looking for a wife, you're more likely to find that a lot quicker in Lima, Peru than you would be in any of these other countries that I've named as hot spot destinations in this video. Now, the next thing that I would say is cost of living. Cost of living in Lima, Peru is probably on par with Medellín, Colombia, if not maybe just a tad bit more expensive. The food is definitely more expensive as far as going out to eat, which is understandable. They have a lot of well-known restaurants there. I think 4 of the top 50 are in Lima by itself. And everywhere that I went for food was amazing. So no complaints about food, and completely opposite of Medellín, which is where the food is very bland. You need to add salt and pepper down there to everything. But in Lima, Peru, from a hole in the wall to a major restaurant, everything was practically almost perfect. I don't have any complaints as far as that goes. But if you are, staying in areas, and these are your main areas, is Miraflores, Barranco, and those are probably going to be your main 2 that you'll want to stay in, especially if you're going for the first time. They are fairly affordable, and like I said, they're on par with about what Medellín is. So if you've been to Medellín and you don't find Medellín too expensive, then definitely you will find Lima very much affordable. So also I want to say as well, when I went out shopping for food, I did a lot of grocery shopping. That wasn't too bad as well. Really, the main thing that was just, I would say expensive is going out to eat at the restaurants, but that can be pretty much anywhere you go. Eating out is always going to be more expensive than staying in. As I said, the food scene there, restaurants, is a big deal. Lima arguably has the best ceviche in the world, and they have many different types of ceviche, but also other food as well. Now, one of their delicacies, and this wasn't something I was interested in eating, is they do have guinea pig. You may not want to try it, or maybe you do, but it wasn't something I was interested in trying. But everything else there was definitely on point. Their lomo saltado, ceviche, as I said, and they have many other dishes that I found amazing. So you definitely are going to want to indulge in eating out here and there when you can. I want to say as well, as far as safety goes, now a lot of people told me that outside of the main part of Lima, it is dangerous, but I feel like anywhere in Latin America, if you are going out of the major developed areas and you're going out into the smaller little cities and stuff, then yeah, of course it's going to be more dangerous within reason, but overall I felt completely safe. I feel like Lima is definitely a lot more developed than Medellín, Colombia, or Cartagena, Colombia. Obviously Cartagena has kind of preserve that kind of colonial look that they have, or I'm not sure if that's what it's called, but that style of buildings and architecture that they have, they preserve that for a reason. But in Lima is definitely a lot more developed. It'll remind you more of a Panama if you've been to Panama, or even maybe the States, as far as like the buildings and everything. So they do have a lot of buildings that have 24-hour security. But the biggest thing here that I want to talk about as well is that if I'm comparing it to Medellin, because this is where I live, you don't have that risk, or I'm going to say it's a very, very minimal risk of scopolamine. It's not something that is known. I'm not sure if it's ever happened in Lima, Peru, or in Peru in general. And that is something that's a peace of mind to be able to move a little bit differently than you would here in Medellín, Colombia. Now, obviously, you don't have this problem in Thailand, but there has been some cases of it in Dominican Republic and also in Brazil as well. So, it is, when we're talking about safety, it is one of the, pros I would definitely say of living there. Now, you also have this feeling of you can go out at night and there isn't really much of an issue of, oh, you can't be walking around or doing certain things at night there. Totally feel safe, and you just need to have common sense, and you'll be fine. If you want walkable areas, I would say you want to stay, as I said, in the Miraflores or Barranco area. From where I was staying, I maybe had a 20-minute walk to the gym, which was fine. It gave me enough time to warm up and a 20-minute walk back, so I didn't really need to do my cardio in the gym. And as well, you have a lot of other things that are very close, especially if you're staying in Miraflores. You have some nightclubs that are close by, walking distance. You have as well some of the more touristy spots that are walkable from Miraflores. So definitely recommend that you stay in those those areas. I think that you can definitely if you're somebody who does YouTube, it's very good. There's a good balance, I would say, of you can do work, you can do dating, and then content creation if that's what you're into. But if not, there's a good balance of just work and dating and normal life, shall we say. Why I think that Lima, Peru is still slept on in 2026, and I'm going to say because there isn't as much pay for play there than there is in all these other countries. Countries that tend to blow up as huge hotspots tend to be more so ones that have a lot of pay for play, which is why I mentioned your Sosúa or Dominican Republic, your Medellin, your Cartagena, your Pattaya, Thailand, your Rio de Janeiro, these typical locations. I mean, I know Bali has kind of blown up a little bit as well, and that's not really known for that, but it's a general digital nomad kind of destination versus it being more of a passport bro destination. So basically, this is why I think Lima, Peru just isn't as big as it is and is slept on. Also, I'm going to say there is no heavily marketed passport bro type of thing. There isn't a lot of people promoting it. There are videos on it. There's a few creators that have gone and talked about Lima, Peru, but it's just not in the amount that it is promoted on other countries are promoted, like Brazil, or Brazil, Colombia, Thailand, and so on. Also, too, I want to say that there are a good amount of women who speak English there. So if you aren't someone who knows Spanish, you can meet girls there that speak English. I think because it's the capital, there's been tourism there for so long. You get a lot of people who are coming from Europe and other parts of the world for not only the gastronomic, can't say that word, gastronomically, or basically you got a lot of people coming there for, food and restaurants. So English is pretty much the world's second language. So you can find a good amount of girls that do speak English there. I'm going to say this as well, that I think you get a lot more educated women there than you may find in some of these other countries like, Colombia, Brazil, Dominican Republic, Thailand. Also, as well, if you are trying to learn Spanish, I do think it is a huge benefit of yours to start off trying to learn Spanish in Peru, because their Spanish accent is extremely neutral. It doesn't really have any real hard accent on it, in my opinion. And this is coming from someone that has been trying to learn Spanish here in Colombia for 3 years and dealing with Paisa Spanish or occasionally Costeña Spanish, or whatever it may be. So you do have that as a huge benefit as well. I think as far as my dislikes goes, it's mainly just the weather. Weather wasn't the greatest when I went, but this is why I said I want to try to go back. Ultimately, why I chose, maybe not to move there or live there is because I'd like to have a place that have good weather all year round versus only for a few months. You are going to have your seasons there. For some people, if you grew up in a place like that in the United States, you're going to appreciate it. But for me, it's not something that I'd want to see myself living in forever. I hate cold weather. I hate dealing with the cold. There is no snow, and in their winter there isn't really a lot of rain, so it's still dry. It's just cold and gloomy. It may remind you of the UK, like in London. I would say also too, what may be a deal breaker for some people or not as attractive is it's not considered a fun city. It's not considered a party city. It isn't going to just jump off at you, off the map and be, oh yeah, it's just this great time of partying and drugs and doing all this stuff that you may find in some other cities. So that may be a downside for a lot of people. But I will say there is partying and they do have a good nightlife there. And their nightlife, as far as going out to clubs and stuff, is very similar to being in the United States, where you can just go out and socialize at a club. It's not like here in Medellín where everyone is going out in groups, and it's kind of not the thing to approach, a mixed group of girls and guys. So, that may be one thing. I want to say as well, for some guys, this may be a downside as well, is that it's going to take a lot more effort to get to know girls and date there. It's not going to be just, a cakewalk or you can flash some money. It doesn't mean anything that you're a foreigner there. They've had foreigners there forever. So, that's not really going to get you very much. Lastly, I want to say here, who is Lima perfect for? I think, in my honest opinion, I think Lima is perfect for any guys that are tired of Medellin, that are tired of Cartagena, tired of Sosua, tired of, Thailand or let's just say Pattaya, or all the major commercial hotspots. If you want something different, and as I said, this isn't for sex tourism, this is just for like normal everyday life. As well, I'm going to say I think it's perfect for guys that are looking for something a little bit more genuine than something that is more superficial or, more materialistic base as well. I think Lima is going to be good for, guys. If you have some level of game, you'll definitely do well there. And then also too, if you're somebody who wants to do content creation, or you're currently doing YouTube, or you are thinking about it, there is so much to do, not only in Lima, but just all of Peru. If you want to cover more about Lima, they also have a coast, that's very much like the coast here in Colombia, where you have, where it's more hotter and they have, better beaches and stuff like that. There's so much to cover. In my time there, in my month, I happened to hit Machu Picchu, Lake Humanity. There's this desert, I'm forgetting the name of it at the moment, Hakachina. So there's the desert Hakachina to cover. That desert is in my intro. Beautiful place. I actually wish I would have spent more time there. They actually have like a little city built around a body of water there that you can stay there for a night or two if you want. But that is a day trip from Lima if you want to visit that. I definitely was glad I did because I was able to get some sun while I was there, but definitely a lot of things to, to see there. I would say the people or the guys that should avoid Lima, Peru are going to be if you are in need of instant validation of women. You're not going to get that there. So, if that's you, Lima isn't going to be a good place for you. If you rely heavily on apps, dating apps, if you can't go out and meet people in person, like at a nightclub, in a cafe, at a mall, or something like that, it definitely isn't going to be the place for you. I know it took me a while to get some dates on the apps. And then as well, if you want nonstop partying as well, it's not going to be the place for you. So I would say obviously Lima isn't for everyone, but I do think that it will be a good fit for a lot of people. Like I said, especially if you are traditional in the passport sense of you're traveling somewhere to enjoy a lower cost of living and, have a potential advantage in dating, but you're not specifically just looking for easy access to women, then yes, I think Lima, Peru is a good fit for a lot of guys. So, that's it for this video. I appreciate you guys watching, and until the next one, you guys be safe.